What HBCU players stand the best chance of making the roster? Is Howard the best team in the MEAC? And North Carolina A&T almost sweeps the Big South Track and Field Championships. Oh yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And I have a question. How many HBCU players are going to be on their NFL roster that drafted them this year? So let's see what teams or what prospects have the best chance in making it. That's the answer that we're going to be looking at right now. And I say this because it's never too early. Okay, it might be too early, but who cares? We're in the media business, so there is no such thing as way too early. We just slapped the way too early title on it, and now it's perfect timing, right? So Rookie Minicamp starts this weekend for all NFL teams. And it made me think of the HBCU players. There are some that got drafted. There are some that had undrafted free agent contracts. There are some who are camp invites. Who stands the best chance at making their roster? I think that there's only two sure things. And that's Joshua Williams and Decobie Durant. Those are the only two. Decobie Durant is making his team. He got drafted second, but I almost feel more confident of that than I do of Joshua Williams. Now, I do feel confident about Joshua Williams, but just because I see the immediate impact, or at least the lane for immediate impact when it comes to Durant. But you look at where they got drafted in placement. We talked about this, the where in placement, the where in what team you get drafted to. And we're talking about the placement. That fourth rounder, if the fourth rounder doesn't make the cut in the 53-man roster in his rookie year, it's typically a disappointment. I don't believe that Williams or Durant is going to disappoint. I believe that Williams is a really good long cornerback who the Chiefs know that they have something in and they can work with him. Then you look at Durant, and I said, as earlier, I think he has a lane to really make an impact in year one. So I believe that they're going to make it. I know they're going to make it through camp and everything. I'm not going to say the sure things for the 53, but I would be actually pretty surprised if those two didn't make it. And it's not just because they got drafted, it's because they were fourth rounders. You look at Ja'Tyre Carter, I think he can make it. Now, when I look at what the Bears did at the end of their draft, they drafted, I think, either 3 or 4 offensive linemen. I think it was 2 tackles and 1 center, and then Carter is considered the guard. But they're looking for offensive line depth. I think that he can make it. You know, he just has to come out there and showcase what he can do. It's on him now. The opportunity should be in front of him. James Houston, another 7th rounder. If he gets it, it'll be about his versatility in the sense that he can play edge rusher, but then he can also play a stand-up linebacker role. You're going to want him to have his hand in the dirt the most, but you might even feel confident. I know that Dan Campbell comes from that Saint school, and Aaron Glenn was there as well. So they have some of those same Saint tendencies that others could have. I wouldn't be shocked to see occasionally James Houston drop back he'll have his hand in the dirt, but then he'll drop back and he'll show that athleticism that comes with being an off-ball linebacker at Florida for his duration of his career, and also showing that he could do it at the NFLPA Bowl as well. Now, once you get past those 4, it's really big question marks. I already think that Carter and Houston are question marks. But then you start getting into your undrafted free agents. And y'all know who I'm going to pick if I'm talking about one free agent. It's going to be Markquese Bell. It's my guy who I think should have been drafted in the first place. There was no surprise there. I didn't want to build up suspense. Y'all know who it is. I like Markquese Bell. I think that Markquese Bell should have been drafted, and the Dallas Cowboys got him as an undrafted free agent. I seen an article about him earlier today by the Fort Worth Star Telegram, and they were just talking about him as a person and player and all of those things. I got to check it out a little bit more. I didn't have enough time to really read it at the time. I just saw the tagline, but I definitely put in my Twitter bookmarks, which, you know, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. I retweeted it out just to give the story some more shine anyway, but I put it in my bookmark so I can read it for later and see how they're feeling about Bell down here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, not too far where I'm from. AMA, y'all know Arlington. We showing love to Arlington, Texas around here. But anywho, I think that I can't be confident that Bell is going to make the undrafted free agent roster. I mean, yeah, I can't make sure that he's going to make the 53-man roster because he is an undrafted free agent. I can just never have utmost confidence that any UDFA is going to make the 53. I can feel confident that some have better chances than others, and some that you're excited about, like, oh, I think he can make it, but I can't be confident about it. And then the last one, and this is a long shot, I just want to throw another guy in there, a camp invite, and that's Aqeel Glass, and that's because he'll make it. I count the practice squad as part of the roster. It's not the 53, but he's on the team. And I think that Aqeel Glass can be a practice squad guy. I said that I think that's his ceiling in year one, and I don't think it's a ceiling that's difficult for him to reach. All he has to do is go in there and play like the Aqeel Glass that we know him to be. And if he does that, I think that he'll show that he's a valuable player. It might be a tough sell, maybe, to try to get 5 quarterbacks on that 90-man roster at the beginning of camp. But I think that it can happen. It's doable. It's a maybe. And with a camp invite, a maybe is all that you're really asking for. If you're saying somebody needs to make the roster, if I had to pick one camp invite, I'm going with somebody who has the strongest maybe. And I think the strongest maybe is a really young quarterback who might have some potential and you want to store away on your practice squad. I think that's Aqeel Glass for Tampa Bay. The opportunity is there. He has to showcase his talent. We're all about opportunity meeting talent on this show. It's something that I've really tried to focus in on and mention a lot because it's something that I've tried to, I don't want to say live by because it's not a value or anything, but it's something that I've tried to say, okay, I have talent, but I have to make sure that I'm putting my talent in the right places. I got to make sure that I'm showcasing my opportunity. And it's really something that I felt since I graduated and just a personal thing, right? We're not going to get into that because it's not about me right now, but that's how I feel about it. So I want to continue to highlight talent needing opportunity to showcase how talented that player is or that person is. It extends beyond just football, right? But I want to talk about that. And if I have to pick one guy, who I was the most confident in outside of Bell and not Bell, but outside of Durant and Williams, I think that I'm going to go with Ja'Tyre Carter. And that's because I know that the Bears are looking for offensive line depth. You could tell by their plan. And if anybody had to, yes, Bell is super talented, but I don't know if he's going to crack the safeties, and you're going to keep a lot of offensive linemen. I think James Houston is extremely versatile, but I just like what the chances are for Carter because of the simple fact that I know they're looking for somebody and Carter fits the build. He can play 2 positions if you need him to. He can play tackle. I think that versatility really maximizes his value for a team that is looking for depth. Now going forward, we're going to do our Feature Friday in our second segment, and it's one that's really exciting to me. I had the question, or I made the statement that Howard is the best sports school in the MEAC. I had to do a little case study to see if I was right, and I came up with a conclusion that it's Howard and only one other team that can even compete with them. But let's see if they can topple them. But first, let me tell you about Built Bar, because Built Bar is the best protein bar on the market, bar none. They have 14 or 17 grams of protein, only 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs. And the remarkable part about that is the fact that they have a multitude of flavors that sound sweet. If I think about banana cream pie, if I think about cookies and cream, I'm not going to think that, oh, well, this flavor is probably extremely healthy for me. But Built Bar has mastered the art of having flavors that taste delicious, but are still extremely beneficial for your health. And it's covered in chocolate. All of these things don't sound like they go together, but Built Bar has made them go together seamlessly, including the Built Puff with all of those same flavors, or multitude of delicious flavors, I should say, covered in chocolate, but then also has marshmallow, protein infused marshmallow. It still doesn't make sense. I've talked to a bunch of people. Nobody understands how it works. We just are glad that it does work. So go to built.com, test my theory. And while you're doing that, use LOCK15 for 15% off your offer. All right, as we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. You know that it is appreciated. And I want you to make sure that you're checking out Locked On NBA Big Boards. You're going to have Rafael Barlow from the NBA Draft Junkies and author of NBA Big Board Newsletter, joined by Richard Stayman, Sam Ferris, Leif Thulin, giving you breakdowns on NBA draft coverage, NBA mock drafts, and as the name suggests, your big boards. Now, let's move to our word of the day before we get into our second segment, and that is bloviate, to speak or write verbosely and windily. And I had a question. Is Howard really the best MEAC school? Are they the, and I'm not just talking about in one specific sport, I'm talking all-around sports school. Is Howard number one? That's the question that I beg. Now, pause it real quick. Well, don't pause it yet. Let me give you the instructions first. Now, I want you to think, if you think it's Howard, write in the comment section you think it's Howard. If you think it's somebody else, write you think that is somebody else. Look, nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to judge you. But pause the comment or pause the video right now and let us know in the comment section who you think that it is. Now, I want to give you a couple of things before it just seems like I am just bloviating and just talking out the side of my neck. I want to give you some of the things that I went by when creating this list. Now, the first thing that I did was, unfortunately, I felt like for accuracy's sake, I was going to go historically at first. That's all I was thinking. But I said there's been so much fluctuation in the MEAC as far as teams leaving. Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman just left. Savannah State left not that long ago. North Carolina A&T just left. So there was so much fluctuation that I didn't want to take anybody in account that wasn't a part of the Elite Eight. Like, the people that are here today are what makes up the MEAC right now. We're not talking about who was the best team in the MEAC. We're only talking about teams that are currently there. So with that being the case, I had to only take 2021. So this is a sample size of simply last year, and not all of the championships are done. Now, there's 14 sports, 16 championships, because track has an indoor and outdoor. So that's 2 and 2, right? For women and men. And when I'm looking at it, all have been done except for the track and field, outdoors, and then baseball and softball. So we didn't take those completely into account. We used the regular season statistics. And when I'm looking at it, I said, okay, bowling has a little bit of teams that aren't in there anymore. Like, I'm not factoring UAB. I'm not factoring North Carolina A&T either. I'm just not factoring those schools in. But I did have a good amount of schools that are in the Elite Eight, and they are a part of the bowling play. So I did list them as far as where they rank amongst each other. So if North Carolina A&T was 1, which they were, I started off with the second place team and called them 1. Now that we've gotten that all out of the way, let's get into what my findings were. And one of my findings that I thought was kind of interesting was in the big 3 sports. Now, the big 3 sports are football, basketball men's, and basketball women's. What did I find? I found something that I thought was interesting. So South Carolina State won as far as won the football championship, but they didn't win anything else, and they weren't particularly good at the other 2 sports. Now, Norfolk won in the men's basketball championship. They won the regular season title, and they also won the MEAC tournament. Then you have Howard winning a 3-way tie. So they had Norfolk, Howard, and then, man, how am I catching a blank right now? Morgan State, I believe. I hope I didn't just catch a freaking brain fart live on camera. But it was Norfolk State and Howard. Those are the important 2 right there. They tied, but then Howard brought it out in the MEAC championship, and they won in the MEAC tournament, won the championship. So with the big 3, it was 3 different winners. But if you want to look at just that, it would have to be Norfolk, in my opinion, that was the best. And if you're only looking at that, that's the conclusion that I would come away with, though it was very small. The margin was very tiny. You couldn't even fit a toothpick in between this margin, because the deciding factor was the fact that Norfolk was 1 spot above Howard in football. And then you look at in men's basketball, they were the champions in the regular season and also in the tournament. But Howard was just at number 2. And then they were in a 3-way tie for the championship in women's basketball. So Howard had a tie in women's, but technically Norfolk was still number 1. They didn't win the championship, but they were still number 1. And then Norfolk had them beat in men's basketball and football. 2 out of the 3 went to Norfolk. So that's that. However, with the margin being so minuscule, you have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture reveals something that I thought was actually quite interesting. And that's where we start getting into our notes. And of the 12 championships, well, first off, let's talk about this. It's Norfolk and it's Howard. That's it. No disrespect to nobody. It is Howard and Norfolk State. They're the only two teams to play 13 or be participating in 13 of the 14 sports. The only two. So as far as plays and competes in the most athletics, it's Norfolk and Howard. Nobody else is tied. There's people close, but nobody else is tied. And then when you're talking about the 12 championships that have already been decided, because remember, it's 12 of them of the 16 that have been decided. Only thing that we're missing is the two outdoors and men's and women's outdoors, and then also baseball and softball. Of the 12 that have been decided, Norfolk and Howard combined for 8 of them, 4 apiece. So they're really close in everything. South Carolina State actually has 3 championships, but ironically, Howard was the first place team in one of them. But it comes down to Norfolk and Howard, 4-4. What happens? What it came down to for me was there was only in all of the athletics. Now, we haven't gotten to track and field, but we can take the regular season baseball and softball stats into play. There's only 2 sports that Howard finished less than third in. And matter of fact, there's only 3 sports that they finished less than second in. So of this 14 now, 11 of them, Howard is either first or second. They're taking either gold or silver. That's how productive that they have been. That's how good they've been. But then you look at Norfolk State, and they've had 6 finishes that were less than third place. So that's where I get the difference is. Up top heavy, Howard got it. If you're looking at the big 3, you could say maybe Norfolk. But when you look at everybody in every sport, Howard is that team. Howard is the team that is either first or second. And I could honestly look at them and say, they might get 6. Might get 7. Really? I think Morgan State probably going to pull out softball, but Howard was the second seed. You're looking at a track and field and cross country events where it's been 1 and 2. Every single one. Men's indoor, women's indoor, men's cross country, women's cross country. It's been 1-2 Howard, Norfolk State. When I tell you that in this competition, it's these 2 versus each other, and that's it. That's what it is. Now, South Carolina State could come up and win both outdoors, and now they got 5 championships, and it might look a little bit different. But as of right now, I'm going with Howard because they have the top level success as far as the same amount of championships as Norfolk State, but then they also have that less of a drop-off where essentially every sport that they participate in, except for 2, is really, really good. And that's the reason I'm going with Howard being the best team in the MEAC. If you want to go with Norfolk State, okay, I get you with the big 3, especially with the men's basketball. But I'm going with Howard. I'm going with Howard for their success in a multitude of sports, not just the ones that get the most national recognition. Now, speaking of national recognition, a lot of that goes to the North Carolina A&T men's track and field team. But the women had a dominant final day when it came to the Big South and put everybody on notice that they are also going to be a force to reckon with. But before I get into that, let me tell you about Bet Online because the NFL schedule has dropped, and this is prime time for you to start counting wins. Everybody does it. Everybody, when the schedule comes out, says, oh, I can get this win and that win and this win and that win. Everybody looks at that. Well, if you're looking at it, might as well put your money where your mouth is. And I've talked about the New Orleans Saints having an over-under of 8.5. Now you can go see and you can pencil in a 9 that you're going to win, right? But if that's not your thing, that's okay because we still have our NBA playoffs. And tonight, we're going to be having 2 potential closeout games. Can the Warriors close out the Grizzlies after what was really an embarrassing game 5? But then also, can the Bucks knock off the Celtics and win back-to-back games? Are we going to have a game 7 in Boston? All of those things or both of those games are things that you can wager on betonline.net. Or if you want to go on your phone, that's fine. Does not matter. Just make sure that you're using them because they are the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I'm kind of disappointed in myself that it took me so long to mention that it's Friday the 13th. And let's recognize my mask that I've always had here. If you've ever wondered what this mask is on YouTube, this is Zoom. This is Zoom from Flash Season 2. And Flash is one of, I was really rocking with Flash, especially this villain right here. Hold on. All right, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. I'm disappointed in myself that it's taken me so long to mention that it's Friday the 13th. So put on yourself a scary movie. But actually, let's recognize this. Let's recognize this mask right here. If you've ever wondered what this mask is on my YouTube, this is from Flash Season 2. It was the mask of Zoom. I bought it because I'm a huge fan. I really love that villain. And that's why I always keep it right here on my bookshelf. So if you're on YouTube, that's what this is. If you ever wondered why does he keep this mask here, I would take it off, but the books might fall. If you're on YouTube and you wonder what it is, there you go. If you're not on YouTube, now you just got an audio description of what my bookshelf looks like or what part of my bookshelf looks like. Now let's get into what was probably a scary sight for everybody in the Big South, and that is the fact that North Carolina A&T's women's track and field team, they didn't come to play. As a matter of fact, North Carolina A&T was just short of sweeping the Big South championships in their very first year. And we're talking about the outdoors. And to me, you're coming in to make a statement in year one. And that could be me projecting because that's what I would do. I would be coming in to make sure everybody understood this is what it is. This is what it's going to be. Like, this is not a 1 year thing. Okay. But that's exactly what the North Carolina A&T women's track and field team did. And we hear a lot about the men, deservingly so. But this performance that they put on the final day was absolutely remarkable. They scored 168 points on the final day of Big South Championships. And they came into the day facing a 50-point hurdle. I mean, a 50-point hill. Probably should say hurdle, man. Dang. Sometimes I'd be so nice on accident and I try to correct myself. No, they were we're going to act like it was the first time I said it. Rewind. They came into this final day facing a 50-point hurdle, and they easily got over it because 168 points on that day. And we'll talk about just how remarkable that day is as far as in the grand scheme of this, because when you compare it to some of the other numbers that other people put up, that's when you really know what it is. Now, in that last day, you really know how impressive that it is. In that last day, facing that hurdle, they came in and on the track, blazed it. On the field, blazed it. They did absolutely amazing. Let's talk about it. Now, let's read off some of the things that they did. High jump, 1-2. Discus, 1-2. 100-meter hurdles, 1-2. 100 meters, 1-2. They probably would have got the 1-2 in the 4x1 and the 4x4 if it was even possible. They could have put two teams out there, 1-2, 1-2. But they didn't. They only got the gold, right? Only got the gold. And hold on, my bad. I'm talking like it's already over. It's not. You get to the 400, just the 400, not the 4x4, but the 400, you got first, third, and fourth. And probably the crown jewel of it all is that 200-meter performance when you have first, second, and third. So let's look back on it. In 6 events, you had the high jump, discus, 100-meter hurdles, 100. You had the 200 and the 400. In 6 events, you got gold and silver. And not to mention in the 200, you got the 1, 2, and the 3. You took every single medal that you could get, first, second, and third, gold, silver, and bronze. Now, in the 4x1 and the 4x4, of course, you couldn't win multiple times, but you got the gold. So you got the peak of what you could do. I think that the fact that you won the 4x1 and the 4x4 and then also won all 3 in the 200, that's what's really remarkable. And more than just placing first and second and where you placed as far as everybody, they were setting records as far as the meet goes. They were setting Big South Championship records in there. So you hear a lot, like I said, about the men's, but I really want to give the shine because they got an Olympian on the men's side, but they got an Olympian on the women's side too. You got Miss Grace out here running for Nigeria in Tokyo. She ran for the national team in Tokyo. Now, what did she do on this particular day, right? She had victories in the 100 and the 200 and the 4x1. This woman was absolutely phenomenal, and she's only a freshman. They talk about how, and let's not forget to mention Dwayne Ross, coach of the year in the Big South, first year, making a statement. They talk about how she's not even aware of how they do things at North Carolina A&T. Once she gets in their regimen, it's only going to be up from here. It's only an upward trajectory. So I think that They have somebody that they're going to have for a long time, somebody who came to them already an Olympian. I think that this is a team to reckon with, and the Big South understands that. Let's talk about how impressive 168 points are. The second place team had 187 points for the whole event. After that, 116. So if you only took the second day of what North Carolina A&T did, you're looking at a second place finish for the entire event. And it's not like they were getting dusted either. They're right there, only 19 points or 21 points of a difference. No, 19 points of a difference, excuse me. That's an impactful moment. That is clutch performance. 6 events where you get multiple medals, multiple meet records. Y'all gonna have to hear about it. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and so on and so forth. North Carolina A&T's women's track and field team is here to stay, and the Big South better beware. It might not have been Friday the 13th when they did it, but best believe it was a scary sight for every single competitor that was on the track or on the field. Now, we're going to continue covering it. I appreciate you guys making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. Next week, we'll be back with more. We're going to be talking heavily about MEAC expansion going on the early part of next week. Now, for your second listen of the day, make sure that you're checking out one of our conference shows here on Locked On. Doesn't matter who it is. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you an initiative. Go check out Locked On ACC with friend of the show, Candace Cooper. That's what you need to go check out right now. And in the meantime, remember that the journey does not stop once the mic is cut off. You can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.